Sicily, 1992. An island of ancient beauty, but beneath the sun-drenched landscapes, a shadow looms, a power that has woven itself into the very fabric of society, operating by its own brutal code. This is the era of the Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia, and their reign of terror is about to reach a devastating crescendo. For years, one man stood as a bulwark against this tide of corruption and violence, a man who dared to look the beast in the eye and fight back with the full force of the law. His name was Giovanni Falcone. Judge Falcone wasn't just a magistrate, he was a symbol of hope for a nation weary of bloodshed, and a symbol of defiance to an empire built on fear. He understood the Mafia not as a collection of common criminals, but as a sophisticated, parallel state with its own hierarchy, its own economy, and its own ruthless logic. He pioneered investigative techniques that peeled back the layers of this secretive organization, exposing its inner workings to the world. His crowning achievement was the Maxi trial in the late 1980s, a legal masterpiece that saw hundreds of mafiosi convicted and sentenced. It was an unprecedented blow to the Cosa Nostra, a victory for the Italian state that sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. But in this war, every victory comes at a price. Falcone knew he was a marked man. He lived under constant threat, his life a carefully orchestrated routine of security protocols and armored vehicles. Yet he never wavered. He believed in the state, in justice, and in a future free from the Mafia's grip. Aeon Society Mafia is a human phenomenon, and thus, like all human phenomena, it has a beginning, an evolution, and will also have an end. He was determined to hasten that end. As Falcone continued his crusade from his new post in Rome, the bosses of the Cosa Nostra, led by the ruthless Salvatore Totorina, grew desperate. The state was closing in, their power was eroding, and Falcone was the architect of their decline. A decision was made in the shadows, a sentence passed, not in a courtroom, but in a clandestine meeting of killers. The order was simple. Giovanni Falcone had to die, and his death had to be a spectacle, a horrifying display of power designed to terrorize the state and anyone who dared to challenge them. The plan was meticulously crafted, an act of warfare on Italian soil. The chosen location was a stretch of the A29 highway, the main artery connecting Palermo's airport to the city. It was the route Falcone always took when he returned to his beloved Sicily. Under the cover of darkness, a team of men loyal to the Corleonesi clan went to work. They identified a drainage culvert running beneath the highway near the town of Capaci. For days, they tunneled, they prepared, they planted. This was no ordinary bomb. They packed the culvert with over 500 kilograms of a mixture of TNT and RDA, a massive explosive charge, powerful enough to obliterate a section of the road. They ran a long detonation cord to a nearby hill overlooking the highway, a vantage point from which the spotters could watch for the judge's convoy. Every detail was planned with cold, calculating precision. The men on the hill had binoculars and a remote-controlled detonator. They were waiting for a signal, a flash of light from accomplices at the airport confirming Falcone was on his way. This was not just an assassination. It was an ambush, an act of war against the state itself. On May 23, 1992, Giovanni Falcone and his wife, Francesca Morvillo, also a magistrate, landed at Palermo Airport. It was a clear spring afternoon. As usual, he was accompanied by his armed escort. The convoy consisted of 3 armored Fiat Chroma cars. The first car, the lead escort, carried officers Vito Schifani, Antonio Montinaro, and Rocco Dicillo. In the middle car, Falcone himself took the wheel, a habit he sometimes had, with his wife Francesca beside him, and his driver seated in the back. The third car followed behind. They left the airport and turned onto the A29 highway, heading towards Palermo. They were heading home. On the hill above Capaci, the spotters saw them coming. He had received the signal. The convoy was approaching the designated point at speed. The man holding the detonator, Giovanni Brusca, waited for the precise moment. He watched as the first car passed over the hidden explosives. He pressed the button. At 5:58 p.m., the world exploded. A section of the highway vanished in a column of fire, concrete, and smoke that rose hundreds of feet into the air. The force of the blast was so immense it registered on local earthquake monitors. The lead car was vaporized, thrown into an olive grove hundreds of meters away. The officers inside, Vito Schifani, Rocco Dicillo, and Antonio Montinaro, were killed instantly. The Falcone's car, which he was driving, slammed into the wall of rubble and asphalt that had been thrown up by the explosion. The impact was catastrophic. The third car managed to stop, its occupants surviving the initial blast. For a moment, there was an eerie silence, broken only by the settling of debris. Then, chaos erupted. Smoke choked the air. The smell of cordite was overwhelming. The highway was gone, replaced by a massive, smoking crater. Italy and the world had just witnessed one of the most brutal acts of terrorism in its history. Rescue crews arrived to a scene of utter devastation. It took them time to even comprehend the scale of the attack. They worked frantically amidst the twisted metal and shattered earth. Judge Falcone and his wife Francesca were pulled from the wreckage, both alive but critically injured. They were rushed to the hospital in Palermo, the city he had fought so hard to save. But their injuries were too severe. Giovanni Falcone died on the operating table. A short time later, Francesca Morvillo also succumbed to her injuries. The three brave officers in the lead car, Antonio, Rocco, and Vito, had been sacrificed in the line of duty. Their lives cut short in an instant of unimaginable violence. The nation was plunged into mourning. The Capaci Massacre, or the Stragi Capaci, was not just the murder of 5 people. It was an assault on the very soul of the Italian Republic. In the days that followed, grief turned to anger. Spontaneous protests erupted across Italy. People flooded the streets, holding candles and displaying white sheets from their balconies. A silent protest against the Mafia's suffocating presence. At the funeral for the victims in Palermo Cathedral, the palpable sorrow of the crowd gave way to rage. Rosaria Costa, the young widow of Officer Vito Schifani, delivered a heart-wrenching plea that became the voice of a nation's anguish. Looking at the politicians, she cried out for justice, for an end to the bloodshed. Her words shamed a political class, often seen as complacent or complicit. The massacre was a turning point. It shook the Italian state to its core and galvanized public opinion against the Cosa Nostra like never before. The war was no longer being fought by a handful of brave magistrates. It became the people's war. The state, spurred by public outrage, responded with force. Within months, new laws were passed, and a massive crackdown was launched, leading to the capture of the mastermind, Toto Riina. In January 1993, many of those involved in the Capaci bombing, including the detonator Giovanni Brusca, were eventually arrested and brought to justice. But the cost was immense. Just 2 months after Capaci, the Mafia struck again, murdering Falcone's friend and colleague, Judge Paolo Borsellino, with another car bomb. Yet, their strategy of terror ultimately backfired. Instead of frightening the state into submission, the massacres created a generation of martyrs whose legacy inspired a new wave of anti-mafia resistance. Giovanni Falcone's work did not die with him on that highway. His methods, his courage, and his unwavering belief in the rule of law became the foundation upon which future generations would continue the fight. His life and sacrifice serve as a powerful reminder that even in the face of the darkest evil, the pursuit of justice can ignite a light that can never be extinguished. Falcone himself once said, "Men pass away, ideas remain. Their moral tensions remain and will continue to walk on the legs of other men." Today, his ideas walk on. Thank you for joining us on this journey into a dark chapter of recent history. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories.